The Maiden of the Forest by pumpkinmoose22. Chapter 5. Kit stood in his private chambers in silence. His outfit was classic white with swirling silver designs sewn into the jacket on either side of the silver buttons clasping it together in the middle. The collar and cuffs were a light blue, the silver designs ranging around it from one side of others similar to those running down his chest. A silvery blue cravat covered his neck, tucking into the white jacket. His white breeches disappeared at the knee behind a pair of shiny black boots, while a thin sword hung beside his waist attached to his belt. He turned this way and that, his long tailcoats moving a little as he glanced in the mirror. He didn't necessarily feel stuffy. He was used to this kind of garb, though his other clothes were a little less formal than the ones he wore now. This outfit had been tailored for one purpose: to make him stick out like a sore thumb in the crowd. His father wanted him to be as visible as possible. Why else would he have to wear an almost completely white outfit? When the tailors had shown the original completely white design to him a couple of months ago, Kit had quite forcefully argued with his father that there needed to be some colour to the outfit, or else he would go mad. The tailors had grudgingly added the blue collar and cuffs. Kit was sincerely grateful they had. Ever since his meeting with that girl in the woods, every time he saw blue he thought of her. A small panic enveloped him, and he had half a mind to run his hands through his slicked back hair. He didn't though, for he didn't want to mess it up. Tonight was the night. Either he would find the mystery girl and charm his father, or he would have to settle for a princess he didn't want. Kit felt like he was being choked. He was in a gilded cage, put on display for all to see, and he was required to pick another to join him inside it. He began pacing, taking several deep breaths. Breathe, he told himself. Just breathe. A sudden knock on the door nearly caused him a heart attack. He turned around and opened it to find his father entering the room in a magnificent red jacket decorated with gold. The collar and cuffs were black with gold designs and dancing across the fabric. The cream-coloured sash across his chest and the bottom of the side hanging off his hip. The tailcoats of his jacket hung behind him similar to Kit's, ending at his knees. His legs covered in a sleek pair of black pants. "It is nearly time, my boy," he said, as he strolled into the room. He looked him up and down before nodding appraisingly. "You look fit for a ball." "As do you," Kit replied. "Kit, what's wrong? You look like a frightened deer." "Nothing is wrong, father." "Yes, there is." "No, there's not." "Yes, there is." "No, there's not." "There's not." "There is." "You're right," Kit sighed. He walked past his father and sat down on the edge of his bed. "I am nervous about tonight." The king studied him for a moment before walking over to sit down next to him. "Choosing a bride can be a difficult thing, son, especially after only one meeting. It isn't impossible. Who knows? Tonight you may be just swept off your feet by the first princess you see." "But what if you don't approve of my choice?" Kit asked. The king put an arm around his shoulder and squeezed him to his side. "I will approve of the girl who will make my son happy, though you may not immediately fall in love. If you are attracted to her and choose her because she is good and kind, I will support you. I trust your judgment, Kit. I always have. Why do you think I love having you at my side at all meetings?" Kit smiled. "I thought you kept me around in order to suffer with you." King Rowan laughed. "A partial truth, my boy." "No, I really think it is important to hear your opinion on things. After all, you are going to be king when I am gone, and I want to get a glimpse of the kind of ruler you will be before I go." Though dressed to perfection, he couldn't deny his father looked unwell. He was paler than usual. That much was obvious. He would most certainly not be dancing tonight. "Father, why must we die?" he muttered. "It is the way of life," he answered. "When you have lived as long as I have, you'll find that death is not something to fear. It is only the next step towards a greater adventure. Your adventure here has barely begun, Kit. Make the most of it while you can. Choose a bride tonight that will keep you to reach for the stars, and not only be a good king, but a great man." "I will do what I can, father," Kit promised. Please, he silently pled, let my maiden come tonight. The clock in the corner of the room lightly chimed. King Rowan patted Kit's knee a couple of times before standing. Well, come along, my boy. The guests will be arriving any time now. Kit took a deep breath before following his father out of his chambers towards the ballroom. Though the guests had not yet arrived, the room was ready to be received. The hall leading to the ballroom, however, was still having last-minute candles lit on magnificent chandeliers, gleaming with countless diamonds. Kit had to commend the servants on ladders as they quickly went from one wick to the next, igniting them at once without burning the cuffs of their golden sleeves. Each servant was in their best uniforms, sporting the royal colours of golden, yellow, and bright blue. The men ran around with bright white wigs, the curls tight on either side of their heads, while the women had braided their long hair before coiling it into a bun at the base of their neck. Prudence, however, wore her hair in its usual fashion, though she had foregone the usual black and grey dress for an elegant midnight blue gown that hugged her waist before flowing out at her hips. The place looks spectacular, Prudence, King Rowan complimented as he and Kit reached her side. She stood at the base of a staircase overseeing the lighting of the chandeliers with a slight scowl. I thank you, your majesty, but all is not finished yet, she muttered as she curtsied. King Rowan took her hand and kissed the knuckles. You know we appreciate all you do, and the servants' efforts, my dear. Prudence smiled, a rarity that was a spectacle to behold. Very few could produce such a smile, and the king and sometimes Kit being in the minority. We will give our best, your highness. That is all we ask, King Rowan replied, patting her hand before walking into the ballroom. Kit made sure to incline his head respectfully towards Prudence before following his father through the large oak doors. The ballroom was magnificent, to put it mildly. Huge floral arrangements dotted around the edges of the large space in between every window, the flowers ranging from happy pinks to sunshine yellows to deep crimson reds, amidst evergreen leaves. The burgundy curtains tapered with yellow tassels in each window had been pulled back, and the golden candelabras mounted on the walls were alight, bathing the room in a warm glow. The staircase leading to the main floor had been dusted, the burgundy and beige colours gleaming, to match a perfect match to the golden candelabras and floral vases bursting with wondrous blooms. The patterned floor had been polished with such finery that Kit could see his reflection as he and his father carefully stepped fully into the room to admire it. Perfect, King Rowan complimented. This will be an unforgettable evening. Don't you agree, Kit? Especially for the people, Kit replied, nodding. Music from one of the balconies reached their ears. The orchestra was warming up. Kit was suddenly struck by how very real this all was. He would choose his future wife tonight. His heart constricted. Soon this magnificent room would be filled with princesses from all over the neighbouring kingdoms, each desiring to catch his interest. He felt somewhat bad that they had travelled so far when he had no intention to give any of them his affections. Those were reserved for the one who had already held his heart in the palm of her hand. But what if she did not come? His father and the Grand Duke had already chosen the young woman they felt would be the most beneficial to the kingdom, the Princess Shelina of Zaragoza. Kit had never met her before, but he had been assured by the Grand Duke that she was quite beautiful and came from a respectable family. Kit knew that the kingdom of Zaragoza was highly fruitful in trade, land, and riches. The princess would be the best choice in terms of advantage, but he didn't want advantage. He wanted love. Your Majesty, Your Highness, the palace is ready to admit guests at your command, Prudence said, pulling Kit from his thoughts. Shall we? King Rowan said to Kit, gesturing to the balcony where they were about to stay until the time came for the first dance. Kit nodded, following him across the room to a hall possessing a small staircase leading to the upper floor. A chair was present for the king, while the prince would remain standing on his feet. The Grand Duke arrived shortly after, and the king was seated wearing a black outfit with a gold embellishments. Captain Alistair appeared to be a moment later, his usual blue jacket with gold cording across the front. Golden tassels covered his broad shoulders. He sent Kit a reassuring smile as the orchestra across the room began to strum a light tune to fill the silence of the hall. Prudence was waiting atop of the staircase below them for the king's signal. King Rowan waved his hand to her, and the woman turned on her heel to alert the royal herald to let in the guests. And so it began. The doors opened and the herald started to announce local nobles, foreign friends, visiting royals, and many people of the land. Kit kept his eyes trained on the doors, his heart pounding in anticipation. The floor below them soon filled with the sounds of laughter and pleasant chatter, while the faint rumbles of fireworks being let off outside occasionally lit up the windows. Several princesses had all been announced, and Kit had to admit, though, that they were rather beautiful. They didn't capture his interest. A few overly excited women cried out to him and waved. Kit couldn't help but chuckle over their antics. His father glanced at him, and he schooled his expression at once. "The Princess Shelina of Zaragoza," the herald announced. Kit looked up. The princess was wearing a magnificent gown of the deepest red with black roses swirling across the delicate fabric. A headdress of black and red jewels cascaded into a veil behind her, and brilliant crimson roses accented her ebony hair. Black elbow-length gloves covered her thin hands, and bracelets made of rubies ornamented her wrists. Her olive complexion and bright eyes were very appealing, Kit had to admit. So this was who his princess would be if his princess didn't arrive. He noticed his father raise a hand indicating for one of the footmen to invite the princess to the balcony. The Grand Duke left to meet her at the base of the staircase. Kit swallowed but refused to allow himself to fill with disdain just yet. The guests were still arriving. He kept his gaze on the staircase. "Who are you looking for?" Kit glanced at his father before mentally shaking his head. "No one." "It's that girl from the forest, isn't it?" the king guessed. Kit smiled involuntarily. "That's why you were so generous with the invitation." "Father, it was for the people," he said, trying not to give his father confirmation, even though he knew it was futile. "I know you love the people, Kit, but I also know your head's been turned. You have only met her once, in the forest." Kit smirked. "And you would have me marry someone I've only met once tonight?" Kit looked over at his father. "It's a princess," his father said stubbornly. "It's a princess or nothing." Kit frowned. "He says that now, but just wait until he meets her," he comforted himself. "The Lady Tremaine and her daughters, the very clever Drizella and the very beautiful Anastasia," the herald announced. Kit looked up and had to try very, very hard not to burst out laughing. The Lady Tremaine, refined in an elegant gown of olive green and golden accents, was very unlike her daughters. Though Kit knew the thoughts were very wrong, he couldn't help but think the girls had been vomited upon by a rainbow. While one's dress's base colour was yellow and the other's pink, the designs on top of them very much hurt his eyes. Both had curled their bright reddish hair and had arrayed themselves with large bows. They threw open their hand fans and battered their eyelashes a little ridiculously, taking their time down the stairs. Kit had to bite his lip to hide the smirk attempting to form. He found himself silently thankful that at least the Princess Shelina was not as eccentric as those two young women. Gaining his composure, he heard the soft click of heels and turned to see the Grand Duke leading the Princess Shelina towards him. She was quite beautiful. A kind smile graced her dark eyes to sparkle, and she caught sight of him. "May I present Her Royal Highness, the Princess Shelina of Zaragoza," the Grand Duke announced, practically purring like a cat with contentment. He was obviously quite pleased with her. Ever the gentleman, Kit stepped forward and kissed her hand, his eyes barring into hers. "You are as handsome as your picture," the princess said, a small smile and a light accent, "and your little kingdom is enchanting." "I hope the princess won't find our little kingdom too confining," Kit replied. He could feel more than see his father's approval. As the guests continued to file in below, Kit decided not to converse with the princess, but instead continued to watch the doors. He knew that some were disappointed in his choice of no communication, particularly the Grand Duke, but there was no way he was going to allow his mystery girl to slip past him while she was the entire reason he had requested the doors of the palace to be open to everyone. Besides, he wasn't necessarily being rude because he was giving the other guests his attention. He had all night to converse with the Princess Shelina if his maiden didn't arrive. An hour later, the constant stream of guests had begun to lessen to a trickle, and Kit's heart was sinking further and further in his breast. He could feel Captain Alistair's worry behind him, but he wouldn't allow his discomfort to show. He kept his hands clasped behind his back and his shoulders straight, his eyes practically bearing holes into the staircase below. His father occasionally glanced at him, but Kit wouldn't oblige in making eye contact. He was afraid his restlessness would be raw in his eyes. The last guest was announced, and Kit's heart shriveled as the doors to the ballroom shut, the echo around the chambers ringing in his ears like one cry mourning. She hadn't come. He couldn't believe it. Even after he'd left her the roses and noticed them gone, even though he had practically prayed all night and day, she wasn't here. He felt as if someone had ripped his heart out and trampled on it and left it to bleed out at his feet. Crushing anguish nearly suffocated him as the herald stepped forward and cleared his throat. The orchestra above halted the music, and the ballroom chatter died away into silence. "My lords and ladies and gentlemen," the herald cried with great gusto, his voice echoing around the magnificent chamber, "distinguished visitors and people of our land, the prince shall now choose a partner for the first dance. Let our ball commence." There was an excited round of chatter to this news. Who would the prince pick? Kit was seized upon with a terrifying reality that he had to act. But he couldn't move. He was still in shock that his enchanting lady of the wood hadn't come. A deep frown edged on into his face as he felt as if he would never be happy again. Feeling the pressure descend upon him, he took a deep, resigned breath. Then there was a distinct rap on the great oak doors. The footmen on the other side of the door shared a glance before opening them in curiosity. A hush swept across the room, causing Kit to look up. He sucked in a surprised breath as well as his heart took off, his entire being filling with such elation he felt as if he was lifting off of the ground. A smile climbing his cheeks was so vast he was sure it would split his face. Could it be? An angel standing on top of the staircase, looking down into the ballroom, was the very definition of magnificence. Her ball gown was the most vibrant cerulean blue he had ever seen. The sleeves and top of the dress were speckled with blue and yellow butterflies. Her bodice was tight, her gown flowing out from her waist in a bell, the fabric glittering slightly in the candlelight. A small amount of her hair, the colour of sunshine, was piled on her head, while the rest hung in loose curls around her shoulders. Tiny gems glared here and there throughout the locks, causing them to sparkle. Here her entire being lit up as she gave him the most dazzling smile, and Kit knew, in that moment, from that small excited gesture, that it was she. His maiden of the forest had come. End of chapter 5. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed this. That's absolutely lovely. Things are warming up now. Ella's arrived. The ball has started. Kit. I always thought that the blue of his outfit and the blue of her dress would match, so I like that. I like that very much. And I also like that in this they don't demonise the Princess Shelina. I mean, I feel kind of sorry for her, to be honest, but I ship Ella and Kit too hard to care too much. Anyway, remember to like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Bye!